my friends, I want to take a few minutes to show you how variable annuities work, the working parts of variable annuities. I think, let me move this out of the way. I think variable annuities get a bad rap, rightly so, simply because they are pretty expensive from a fee perspective. Hold on just a second. Let me get this out of the way. There we go. Okay. But at the end of the day, a lot of people like the sales pitch. The old rule of that said no one ever buys an annuity. Annuities are always sold. And I think there's some legitimacy to that. But with that said, you got to understand how variable annuities work. All right, so there's really three components to a variable annuity. You have your cash value, and that's what I call your walk away money. Walk away money. This is not to be confused with your income benefit amount. Two completely different things, and yet I'm telling you, so many people don't recognize the difference between these two. And then three is your death benefit. All right, we're going to go over all three of these things. You got your cash values, your walkaway money. How much do you, how much do you get if you close the contract out today? All right, so let's talk about your cash value first and foremost. A lot of times, variable annuities will have pretty significant surrender charge. I'm telling you, the reason I want to point this out because, like I was talking about Michael Kitces the other day, he mentioned that there's 6 different PLRs, private letter ruling, PLRs, private letter rulings from the IRS to, I think we said 6 insurance companies, all stating that they can start to offer variable annuities without commissions, essentially. And look, it's not exactly what I'm saying here, but at the end of the day, because of the nature of the investment industry business, the financial advisory business, more and more companies are realizing that they have to offer insurance products without commissions. And you'll see in the next 5 to 10 years, I think, if even quicker, this huge mass of insurance products offered for no loads, essentially. And with no loads, I don't know if there'll be surrender charges, but no loads, which means they'll be offered by registered investment advisors under the concept that they can maintain themselves as fiduciaries because they're not making commissions. Does that make sense? You're going to see that coming out. And so when you see this, you got to understand how variable annuities work because this will be part of the repertoire of RIAs. And again, what's up, big man? You want to come up, so everybody? Papa wants to say hello, everybody. Papa wants to say hello. And so because of that, we're going to see a bunch of annuities coming down the pike. And, it'd be to your due diligence to understand how they work, for sure. And we're going to show you how this works. So can I put you down? Look at that guy. Isn't he so cute? Your dog, just stick to the issues. I love this guy. I love you, Pablo. We all love Pablo. All right, so let me put you down here real quick, dog. All right, so let's go over first and foremost the cash. Let me spray this here real quick. We'll go over the cash account part of it. Again, walk away money. How much do you get if you sell your account right now? You close it out. That's all that matters from a cash perspective. So we're going to say you put $100,000 in. All right. Oops. We're going to say you put $100,000 in there. Now, the broad market grew, say, 7% a year. All right, so we're going to say 7.2% a year is what the S&P 500 did. Well, I guess to it. So the broad market grew 7% a year, which meant the S&P 500 would have grown to $200,000. Let's see if this guy works instead as red. Oh, look at that. $200,000. Why is it not doing that over there? Either way. So the S&P 500 grew at 7.2% a year, which meant this account, your $100,000, if it were not an annuity, would have grown to $200,000. But because it's an annuity, you're probably only going to get 5.2% because we'll just say 2% fees. All right. So when all's said and done, your $100,000 in 10 years, present value, 5.2% is your interest rate. 10 years, 0 payment, compute future value, $166,000. You okay, big man? Mr. Pablo's over here sneezing. All right, so this is worth $166,000 in 10 years, all right? In 10 years. For simplicity, though, in 5 years, we're going to say, what we're going to say is we have 10 years of surrender charges. Not 10, usually 5 years of surrender charge. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So whatever the gain on your account is, you'd have to pay a surrender charge on that gain. And there's usually 5%, 4%, 3%, 2%, 1%. It can be as long as 10 years. It can be as low as 3. It can be no surrender charge. But within a certain amount of time, in this case, it's a 5-year surrender charge. Surrender charge. And it's declining. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let's just say in year 3, you have $120,000 in this annuity. All right, and you want to cancel the whole thing out because you saw a video from Ken Fisher and he hates annuities. And he says, okay, at the end of the day, you get your $100,000 back free and clear of any surrender charge because that's your principal. All right, now we're not talking IRAs or anything. It doesn't matter in this case at all. IRA is a government regulation. It has nothing to do with the insurance company. Good boy. But in this case, you have $20,000 is your gain, $20,000. So we take $20,000, we times by 0.03, and your surrender charge is what, $600. So in this case, after 3 years, your $100,000 grew to $120,000, and you want to cancel the whole contract. It costs you $600 in surrender charge. Does that make sense? Now remember, annuities are always LIFO, last in, first out, which always means if you have $120,000 and you had $100,000 as your basis, the first $20,000 always comes out. It's always last in, first out, LIFO. So no matter, you can't say, give me my $100,000 back and let my $20,000 sit there. It doesn't work like that with annuities. It always is last in, first out, and the last in is the amount of money you made. Hope that makes sense. So in this case, you're saying, look, I want $20,000 out. I'm paying 3% on my $20,000 because that is what my gain is, and that is what the surrender charge is. If I want $10,000 out, I'm paying 3% on that $10,000 out because that is what my surrender charge is. Now, in this case, what would happen? You always have, well, I won't say always. Most annuities give you access to 10% of your portfolio value. In this case, $12,000. Without surrender charge. Most of them give you access to 10% of the portfolio value without surrender charge each and every year. So in this case, if you only want $10,000 out, there really wouldn't be a surrender charge. I know that's confusing, but in the back of your mind, always remember, whatever your account value is, the gain on that will be subject to a surrender charge, usually between the first and usually up to the 5th or 7th year. Very rarely on variable annuities is there a 10-year surrender charge. On index annuities there are, and index universal life insurance there are too, but on annuities there's not. Usually it's a 1, 3, 5, and 7-year surrender charge. But always remember, it's LIFO, last in, first out. You have access to 10% a year of your portfolio, whatever the account value is, without any surrender charge. But if you want to close the whole thing out, the gain will be subject to whatever the remaining surrender charge is. I hope that makes sense. And so at the end of the day, say, I don't like that annuity because I only got $166,000, so the S&P 500 is up to $200,000. Well, in this case, because 10 years are up and there's no more surrender charge, you have access to that whole $166,000, all right? That is your walk-away money, $166,000. Now, that's going to play a role when I show you what happens next when it comes to an income benefit. And this is where I think a lot of people don't understand this. And unfortunately, I think a lot of insurance salesmen are, if they might not understand it either, or they're very squeamish, so that when you walk out of the office, you think you have a product which you actually don't have. So let's go over to this. All right, so now we're going to talk about your income benefit. All right, so remember, we put $100,000 in. The S&P 500 grew to $200,000 start, but our account only grew to $166 because we have that 2% extra fees. All right, and the 2% extra fees is going to provide you this thing called an income benefit. All right, so let me show you what an income benefit is. So you have two different accounts. This is your cash, your walkaway money, cash value, and your income benefit. Two different things happening here. A lot of insurance companies will give you a 6% step up on your income. So it would be usually, it can be not compounded, but simple interest. So they're going to say, look, well, they might even sometimes even get 7, but whatever. In this case, in 10 years, you will have $160,000 as an income base. No matter what happens to the market, is your income base. All right, no matter what happens to the market. So here you got $166,000 as cash value. That's if the market goes up by 7.2% a year. Here you get $160,000 of income base. So here you're like, well, the income base isn't doing me any good because the cash value is higher. Okay, but let's just say in this case, the S&P 500 did not go up 7%, but actually was down like in the previous decade. So now the S&P 500 is down to $90,000, but because you have more fees and everything, you're down to $80,000. I'm just throwing that number out there. So after 10 years, the S&P 500, your $100,000 in the S&P 500 fell 10%. You're down to 90. But because of the variable annuity has higher fees, your cash value is only $80,000, your walk-away money. So you could cancel that contract and get $80,000, whereas if you kept in the S&P 500, you have $90,000. Neither of those are very good. The income base, on the other hand, says, look, regardless of what happens to the cash value, we're going to always give you a 6% step up each and every year, or a 7% or a 5%. And you'll get 6% where you can take 5% a year withdrawal based on that amount. All right, so they're saying we will guarantee you, and that's part of the fees that you're paying, that in this case, no matter what happens over here, you will have $160,000 for which you can take 5% annual distributions off for the rest of your life. So we take our trusted calculator, remember, link in the show notes, 160,000 times 0.05, which means you can get $8,000 a year of income off that amount. Guaranteed. It'll never go away. It'll never go away. Does that make sense? That is the benefit of the income benefit. Now, what a lot of people do is say, so in 10 years I can get a check for $160,000? No, you cannot get a check for $160,000. You get a check for whatever this account value is. There's 2 separate accounts here, the income benefit base and the cash value base. So here you're saying, look, but here's the kicker. So a lot of people say, well, that's pretty good. So I guaranteed that I'll have a certain amount of income I cannot outlive, essentially an annuity. You're not really even annuitizing, but you're saying I'm guaranteeing I'll have $8,000 a year, which I can tap into in 10 years, or whatever the contract is. In this case, we're using a 6% step up with a 5% guaranteed distribution rate off that step up base. I hope this makes sense. You're like, yeah, guaranteed. So you have $8,000 a year in which to draw on for the rest of your life. And if you're married, it might be a little bit less depending on what the contract states. But either way, that's what you're saying, which sounds pretty good. And then you're like, look, if you guys die, you could have some left over to your kids. But that's not gonna happen, because what's happening here is you're taking $8,000 a year out of an account that's not really $160,000. I mean, it's $160,000 from just a transactional account amount, but it's not $160,000 in real live dollars. It's still $80,000. So what's happening here, when you're taking $8,000 a year out, you're actually taking it from this. So now the next year is $72,000. The next year is $64,000. And so what happens is you're guaranteed this as long as you're alive. You're guaranteed that $8,000 as long as you're alive, even when, notice I didn't say if, even when this drops to zero, because it's going to drop to zero. You're taking 10% initially a year. That's a 10% initial distribution rate right there from $80,000, from $8,000 off $80,000. So when this guy drops to zero, I mean, because look at this. Now $8,000 off a $64,000 portfolio value is 8 divided by 64. That's a 12.5% distribution amount. You're not making any money here. Now, what annuity sale, this ticks me off. They'll say, you could still have upside here too. This could even still grow for you. And it could, unless you're in a down market. Then it won't, because then you're taking $8,000 a year off a cash value account that's dwindling right before your very eyes. So in this case, This $80,000 is going to be gone probably in 8 years. It'll be zero. So you have nothing left in this account whatsoever. But even when this is zero, you still have $8,000 a year left of income as long as you're alive. That's the benefit of the income amount. Is you're saying, look, I'm alive. This account just got smoked. Well, at least I have $8,000 a year. All right. Now that may sound pretty good, except let's watch. The problem with that is that you're not leaving any money to your heirs, and you're getting $8,000 on an account that you started with $100,000 after 10 years. That's just not that great. Believe it or not, it's good if you have $80,000 and you're able to get a 10% distribution yield, but you're not getting that. You're literally getting $8,000 off $100,000 you initially put in. After 10 years, you made no money. Now, that did happen in 2000 to 2010. I do not want to neglect the fact that these played wonderfully well for people who caught the break, essentially, that they got killed in the market. It did horribly well in 2011 till today, because in 2011 till today, your income base, $100,000 you start with, now it's $160,000. You had your cash, that's on your income base. Your cash account, you had $100,000. We're up, 15% a year, so 15% a year in the S&P 500 would be, let's take a gain, and I'm assuming that's what it was. I don't know exactly what the rate of return has been. Present value, 15% a year, interest, 10 years, zero payment. This is worth $404,000 today. The S&P 500 worth $404,000. But because your annuity has an extra 2% fee, instead of getting 15% a year, you only got 13% a year. So you're worth $339. So in this case, your cash value is $339. So you sacrificed that's $60,000 in which to have this income benefit that you're not even going to use anyway. Because this is, this right here, you're never going to use a 5% income benefit off, a 6% roll up when you've been getting 13% a year. So that's the drawback here. So in the 2000, 2010, the variable annuities look great, but mostly it doesn't look great simply because $160,000, which you are paying for on a 6% roll up, literally cost you $65,000. It costs you $65,000. And to be honest, I'm actually being a little bit more conservative with the fees on variable annuities, frankly, because the fees are incredibly high. You're even talking about 3% and 4%. So if you're talking a 3% fee, I'm only giving 2%. If you're talking a 3% fee, so we had 12% instead of 13. Then you work at 310. All right, so now it's worth 310. So essentially, you're down $100,000 in order to have an income benefit you're never going to use ever. So that's the drawback there. All right. So now, lastly, some people say, "But Josh, I'm kind of risk averse. I'd rather take the 310 with a guarantee over here." Now, I get that 100%. Just remember, you are paying for it in the facts of fees. So what happens in this regard is you're paying, again, almost $100,000 or $50,000 in which to protect you to guarantee this income benefit, which most likely you won't use. There are times you use it, which looks great, but most likely you won't. Anyway, so that's where I think a lot of people misread the annuities. They do play a benefit. I don't think they play the benefit a lot of the annuity salespeople say in terms of you can get some upside growth with an income stream you can't outlive. Once you generate the income, you're never going to get any growth on it because the cash is being depleted at such a significant rate, it cannot make up for the depletion relative to the interest or the rate of return that you're getting with the variable annuities because the fees are too high. All right, so now let's talk about the death benefit, which is really my pet peeve more than anything. This is where I think a lot of annuity guys really go wrong. So what happens here? We'll put $100,000 in again. The S&P 500 is at $404,000, and your variable annuity is at $310. We'll just say for simplicity. Cash value. That's your walkaway money. Remember, cash value and walkaway, the exact same thing. S&P 500 basis. All right, so that's your initial thing. Right. So when you die, then let me put the death benefit. This is actually what pet peeve of mine. I got green. Do I got red? What did I do with red? I don't know. Oh wait, I put it over here. I don't know what I did with red. Oh, there it is. All right, so the S&P 500 is up to 404. Your walkaway money is 300, and this with a $100,000 annuity, you have a death benefit of $100,000 that your initial cost basis is, or it'll be this amount here, or it'll be a 6% roll up, which we already talked about, which would be $160,000. So there's three things that happen here. Is that depending on the contract and the fees, they'll give you a 6% roll up. So for every year you don't access the money, you're going to get a 6% roll up on a death benefit too. So even if the S&P 500 fell to $90,000 by the time you die, and let's just say that's your cash value, you would get this right here because they're going to guarantee you 6% a year each and every year as a death benefit roll up. Hope that makes sense. So in the case of 2000 to 2010, if you died in 2010, you probably have $85,000 in your annuity. If you took no money out of it, your heirs would get this right here if you paid for the death benefit roll-up. If you took no money out of it and you did not pay for the death benefit roll-up, your heirs would get this right here because of what's called M&E, mortality and expense fees. So you know at the end of the day, $90,000 is your cash value, but that is not what your heirs are going to get. They're going to get this or they'll get that depending on what your contract states. The reason I like this though is, well, now you got $310,000 in it, right? You're not getting this because if you die tomorrow, they're getting that. They're getting whatever the cash value is. You're not getting that because if you die tomorrow, they're getting what the cash value is. And you're not getting this because I just said you're not getting the death benefit roll-up because you have twice that in your account. But it still costs you somewhere. If you have this roll-up, sometimes it costs 0.85. Sometimes it might have been more than 0.85. And so the issue is here, you've been paying for this death benefit, almost a whole percentage point a year that you most likely, the vast majority of times, you're not going to use. And that's where the annuities are very expensive. You're like, why do I need to pay for that death benefit? Or why do I need to even pay the income roll-up? Well, in 2000 and to 2010, that is literally the exception to the rule. The vast majority of times, your cash value alone will be more than offsetting the death benefit that you would have from the variable annuity contract, which costs you upwards of 1% a year. And now the drawback here is if you have this 310, you're like, well, I still got 310, but if you would have had the S&P 500, you'd have 400. And by the way, if this is in a non-IRA account, this right here transfers to your heirs tax-free from a step-up basis. This right here is not. It's IRD, just like an annuity or any IRA. This right here, if it's in a non-IRA, that's $200,000 difference. Your cost is $100,000, is worth $310. That's a $210,000 gain that you have. That's taxed as ordinary income to your heirs, which is why I say never do a variable annuity outside of an IRA. But there's no benefit of IRAs in terms of tax write-offs or tax benefits. Yes, there is benefits to annuities as I just described here. Never do an annuity outside of an IRA. You are sacrificing potential for tax-free step-up basis. Always do it inside an IRA because IRAs always transfer through income respected decedent just like annuities do. So while people say you don't get any double benefit of taxation inside an IRA, outside an IRA you still have IRD. So essentially you're taking step-up basis money and putting into an annuity, which is IRD. I don't want to get too deep in that. I've done this before, but remember, annuities should always be done in an IRA. Lastly, if it's outside an IRA and you want to transition this to a regular account, it's going to be taxable to you as ordinary income. That is capital gain. I mean, that's not capital gain. That is OI, ordinary income. Your gain is just like an IRA. It transitions to ordinary income. So if I have an annuity outside an IRA and I get sick of paying those fees, I want to transfer it to Vanguard, well, guess what? They got to sell the thing. The difference between my cost and the account value, 210, will have to be reported on a 1099 as ordinary income. If it's an IRA and you do a trustee-to-trustee transfer, it's a complete free exchange. I'm telling you, insurance company will be, well, you can do 1035 exchanges into other annuities. That's it. So if we're trying to get away from an annuity, we can't do it outside of an IRA without paying income tax on the gain. If you do it within the IRA, you're doing trustee to trustee transfer within the umbrella of an IRA. Annuity to mutual fund, annuity to stock account, annuity to CD. Because the umbrella of the annuity of the IRA supersedes the annuity, it's all free and clear of taxes because it transitions from an IRA to another IRA. All right, so I hope this helps. A lot going on there. You're going to see more in variable annuities, so keep your eyes and ears peeled. Remember the three things. Cash value, that's your walkaway money. How much of a check do I get? Net of surrender charge. Point 2 is you have your income benefit amount. How much can I take on an annual basis if not annuitizing, if I'm turning on the income stream? And then part 3 is your death benefit. All right, we'll see you next time.